Look, there's a fundamental policy in Scientology. You want to talk about fundamental. The fundamental policy. You yourself, all lawyers hired by Scientology, are handled pursuant to this policy, and the policy is the legal policy for the church. And in sum and substance, Hubbard says the job of legal is not to make the organization comply to the law. The job of legal is to make the law comply with the organization. And so this is just, so these aren't events that stick out in my mind. This is day-to-day life in the legal department in Scientology.
Would you take a look at exhibit number? I move to strike the answer as non-responsive. Would you take a look at the exhibit you've attached as F to your declaration?
Yeah.
Is this the, what you described as the fair game policy?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah.
And what in particular is what you describe as fair game? Is it the whole policy or just some section of it?
Fair game. SP order, fair game. That indicates that SP order equals fair game. Okay. SP order, fair game, enemy. They all mean the same thing. A equals A. Enemy. SP order, period, fair game, period. And then he defines it. May be deprived of property or injured by any means by any Scientologist without any discipline of the Scientologist, may be tricked, sued, or lied to, or destroyed.
And as of the time that you submitted this document to the federal court, did you believe that that was still an operative policy of the Church of Scientology?
I didn't believe it. I was living it. Like I live it to this day.
Had that policy, to your knowledge, as expressed in that exhibit, been withdrawn?
Yeah, we've been through this already. I told you the cancellation stated that the practice of declaring people fair game has been canceled.
And when was it canceled, sir?
The procedure and the technology for handling suppressive persons does not change. It remains the same.
When was it? When was that policy letter canceled?
Sometime in the 60s.
Before you became a member of the Church of Scientology?
Yeah.
Okay. A decade before you became a member.
The policy letter was not canceled. The labeling of people as fair game was canceled.
The policy letter remains in effect. There's no cancellation of the policy letter. That's your testimony under oath?
The policy, no, I'm telling you, the policy of treating SPs like this is not canceled.
The policy letter, sir, has it been canceled, yes or no?
I have no idea. I know that the activity of declaring people publicly as fair game was canceled, and he even stated because it creates bad public relations. The procedure, how we deal with these people, does not change.
Let me ask you, earlier today we were on exhibit numbered 1, and Mr. Babbitt said he didn't have a copy, and so we've made that available to him.
I've got it now.
Okay. Would you read for us, I apologize for saying this, and don't take it as a personal criticism, but I find your handwriting extremely difficult to read. Could you read just the first page to us so we can get a flavor?
Well, I'll just explain what this document is.
I'd like you to read it, and then if I have any questions, or Mr. Babbitt does, you can talk about it. But would you read into the record Exhibit 1?
This is an internal Scientology record. This is part of a liability formula, okay? And if you're perceived to have acted in a treasonous fashion, you have to come up through the ethics conditions through liability, and there's a number of control, remember the word control, techniques that are used to make you thoroughly loyal to the organization. The first step of the liability formula is find out who are your friends, okay? And on the ship, Greg Will here, who was assigned to supervise me and watch me when I was doing my sabbatical and going through my reformation, my thought reformation, caused me to write this document to satisfy the first step of the liability formula. So,
I move to strike all of that as non-responsive. Would you read, please, exhibit numbered 1, the first page, into the record? Thank you.
And so none of the things that I read here should be taken literally because they're done for the purpose of escaping further degradation and punishment within Scientology.
You were lying at the time you wrote it.
Did I say that?
I'm asking you.
Did I say that?
Were you lying at the time you wrote this letter?
Lying about what?
About the substance of the letter.
I just gave you the context of the letter and you moved to strike it. Do you want the context or do you not want the context?
Can you answer my question, yes or no?
No,
Were you
I'm not
lying
I'm not going to play this game with you. I'm not going to play this game with you. I explained the context of it, you moved to strike it, and now you're wanting to get more context.
No, I'm not asking for context, I'm asking for your judgment.
I've given you the context, and that's that.
Okay.
So yeah, the whole thing is false in that this is not a sincere communication. This is something that was elicited pursuant to a mind control technique in Scientology, that you have to go through these degrading and demeaning things and obsequious actions in order to be trusted again.
Okay.
Okay.
And so at the time you wrote it, you knew it was false and insincere, correct? Is that correct, sir?
You know, you asked me this question, like I told you, when you're back then in there and you're subjected to this and participating in it, it's a meaningless question.
At the time you wrote it, did you believe it was true, yes or no? Yes or no?
It's not a yes or no question.
Answer any question, Mr. Minister. You can explain it any way you want.
I did explain it 3 times, and we'll move on.
At the time you wrote Exhibit 1, did you believe what you said in this letter was true?
No.
Either yes or no?
No. No, the
Okay,
answer is
thank
no.
you. Now please read into the record page number 1 of Exhibit 1.
Dear sir,
Well, it starts at a date. What is the date, sir?
30 November 93, which was about 17 to 20 days after me meeting Miscavige in New Orleans, where he capitulated and offered me this reward and assigned me Kakan status.
What was the reward?
It was to train as a Scientology auditor and go all the way up the Scientology bridge to all their higher levels.
On the ship
On the
in the
ship
Caribbean.
without any other distractions, and also be deemed Kakan, which is an ethics status which you are relieved of the death penalty 10 times over.
Okay. You had you blown from the church?
I had blown from the church and had been gone for 9 days, and we went through this, and he called me in San Antonio and we met in New Orleans.
And is the act of blowing from the church as a member of the Sea Org something that is a suppressive act?
According to Scientology, yes.
So that the opportunity existed for you to be declared a suppressive person, is that true?
Not really,
No?
because Miscavige was too afraid that I might screw up the exemption, and that's why I got the red carpet treatment.
I see. Okay, why don't you read into the record this letter you wrote on 30 November 1993. It was to Mr. Miscavige, am I correct?
Do I have to read this whole letter?
No, I'm going to have you read the first page,
Okay.
maybe half of the second page.
Here is the letter I told you I was going to write. First of all, I wanted to thank you for all the things you did as a friend, period. I know you first as a friend, period. We didn't really know each other before the 1980 Super Bowl trip, period. I don't even remember how it was that you came to invite me or I invited myself. Alls I know is the next thing I know, we're at the Beaumont truck stop, wolfing waffles, and plotting the rest of the drive strategy.
Keep going. Just finish the second page.
I guess I was sort of driven to New Orleans this year toward the location of that pleasure moment.
And read the next paragraph if you would.
In any event, I realize in getting OWs cleared that you have always been a great friend. And I haven't even acknowledged that fact or recognized it because of my built-up withholds. Wherever we took a break, okay, so that's the first 2 pages.
So O/W, what does that stand for?
It's overts and withholds. It's a mind control technique of putting the person at effect. You're required to disclose every errant thought or action that you've ever done, and the end product of it is that you believe you really sort of, now that you know everything and that I'm the mea culpa, you you sort of bow and scrape to get yourself back in. Thus, you do a liability formula, and state who your friends are.
And so this letter you wrote to Mr. Miscavige on the 30th of November, 1993, you wrote it even though you didn't believe sincerely what you were writing, correct?
Well, no, when you didn't listen to me. When you write those OWs, if I right now made you and you agreed to do it, confess everything that you had any embarrassment about, any doubt about, any shortcoming, any dishonest, immoral, unethical stuff that you've done, made you confess it all, everything, disclose to me everything, you would be in an obsequious sort of frame of mind, and compliant frame of mind, and that is the frame of mind that I was in when I did it. So your question, that's my answer to your question.
Well, I think actually your example is inconsistent, so let me explore it. You told me a moment ago that Exhibit 1 is insincere, that this isn't actually how you felt.
So we're going to play whipsaw games.
Well, which is it? Was it true or was it false at the time you wrote it?
I just told you. I have no better way to explain it.
Was it true or false, sir?
I was in an obsequious, propitiative frame of mind by design, by the design of the technology, and it was sincere. I was sincerely in a state of weakened emotional capacity, and that was my state of mind.
Whether you were strong emotionally or weak emotionally, the substance of what you wrote on 30 November 1993 was what you honestly believed.
Ask me a specific question. Did we go to a truck stop in Beaumont? That's true. Okay.
Did you regard Mr. Miscavige as your friend?
At that time, at that moment?
Yeah.
After having submitted to all of that mind control, I did.
Yeah. Did you think that he had been quite a good friend to you?
Not really, no. See, you got to recognize he confessed. He prostrated himself and begged forgiveness, which I thought to myself, my God, this is amazing. This has never happened. All these people have been declared suppressive, who defied him and all this other kind of stuff, and here he is begging me. Something major has changed with him. Now I'm going to reciprocate, okay? And of course, I later found out that all that was somewhat by design by him, to save his own neck and his own skin.
Prostrate means to have stretched himself on the floor, head bowed. He was literally doing that, sir?
Figuratively.
Oh, tell me what he did then.
I've already been through it if it's been asked and answered. Let's move on.
No, you just said he prostrated
I've been
himself.
through this with you. He met me in a hotel room in New Orleans and begged me. What
did he say?
Begged me to return.
What did he say?
I apologize. I'm sorry. I'll never do this stuff again. It'll never go weird and personal like this. I'm going to stop abusing people and I'll stop abusing you. If you come back, you will get rewarded for what you did, because after all, the IRS exemption never would have happened absent you. You are the guy that made it happen, okay? And you are a cacan. You could commit murder 10 times and you're forgiven.
You remember that conversation vividly. That's almost a verbatim retelling of it?
Well, it was a significant event in my life. That's the sum and substance of it. Now, if you asked me if you had a transcript of it, was it put in exactly those words? I don't know. So it's 20 years ago.
I am interested, in addition to your, no doubt, indispensable elements, were lawyers also involved in connection with the IRS exemption?
Only as an afterthought, although the litigation lawyers who didn't really get acknowledged by Miscavige had some effect. But
the lawyers at Williams and Connolly, were they involved in any way?
Hardly at all. They had screwed the whole thing up, and that's what caused Miscavige and me to go in there. What are you smirking at? Wait. Are you asking me? You know, Ted, I'm about ready to walk.
Well, if you walk, I'm not going to be able to present your testimony because I have to ask you those. I agree with you that this is an abusive process, Mr. Rathbun, but there's nothing I can do about it.
All right. All right. Is there a time limitation at some point? I mean, they can't just use the litigation process to continue to harass me day after day, can they?
Well, I know you're upset, and then he's asking a lot of questions that will never make any difference in this case. But the testimony that you're going to give is going to make a difference, so I would ask you to stay and just...
Is there a time limitation at some point on all of this, or are they just going to have an open-ended...
Half hours, excuse me.
6.5 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
The videographer tells me we need to change the tape, so why don't we go off the record for a couple of minutes to let him